Hello, everyone. Welcome to Synchronic Saturdays with Megan and Crystal. My name is Megan. I'm an ENFJ, and Crystal here is an ENFP. Today, we're going to be continuing on our series where we talk about the different, the spectrum of each of the 8 cognitive functions. The cognitive functions were developed by Carl Jung in the 1920s in his book, Psychological Types. You probably already know that, but just in case you don't, there's a little reminder. And we were on hiatus technically for a couple months because Crystal and I were both changing jobs and a bunch of stuff. So we did already begin on the spectrum of extroverted intuition, also known as NE. No matter how NE is manifested in a person, NE always seeks to imagine. And in this episode today, we're going to talk a little bit about how NE can manifest itself in a lower vibe way, yet is still imagining, or a higher vibe way that is also still imagining. So without further ado, let's talk to our ENFP.
Oh, I love how you say our, like I am adopted by the collective of your subscribers or something.
Yeah, I guess it's like, well, here we go. We have a specimen here, so let's just jump right into how, how have you seen this dynamic, and how have you seen this dynamic play out in your life as far as like a lower manifestation of imagining versus like a very high, like something you're proud of?
Yeah, I feel like it is very subjective based on like what I'm focusing on in, I guess, an SI way. It's like almost fueling it at times to where my most worst fears will become more apparent to me as possibilities when I start to like spiral because I'm really afraid of like this one thing or really like focused on trying to control this one thing. I think that's like kind of me at my worst. But when I get like from low vibe to high vibe NE, I kind of open my mind to, well, maybe what I'm fixating on isn't the whole story. So even when I'm fixating on something good, I will still be aware of bad possibilities. Or even if I'm fixating on something bad, I'll be aware of the good possibilities. But either way, it'll almost like feel like my imagination is more balanced rather than like, heavy on one end, light on the other. So I guess like low vibe is when I'm way too focused on one side of the, I guess, coin or side of that thing.
I just thought of something. Would you say that low vibe NE is more likely to imagine fear-based scenarios of like bad things happening or no opportunities? What would happen if this was taken away? Whereas higher vibe NE can imagine miracles happening?
Yeah, I think so. I feel like I would say like the objective definition is that low vibe NE will focus only on one side of what's more apparent to it. And I think that just from how the human psyche works, we tend to focus more on what brings us pain because of an evolutionary instinct. So I guess it would be fear. But if in theory, you'd only ever had like really good things happen to you and super impact you, you might also focus on only those things and not account for like bad things at the same time. So I guess I feel like
that's
either
a good point, is like you could be like kind of just like an entitled, sheltered NP that just expects good things and doesn't have a well-rounded approach.
Yeah, like if I spend all my money because I've only ever like, been well off and one day I don't have any money left, that would also be like my low vibe NE in a sense, wasn't ever entertaining. Well, what if my money doesn't always come in the proper way? So that's still low vibe, because even if I'm not fear-based spiraling, it won't be as apparent. It's still not balancing both sides, because everything I should do should have a degree of, I guess, imaginative humility where it doesn't have to be this way. And that statement can go for good or bad. For bad things, I'll be like, oh, it doesn't have to be this way, and then focus on good things, try to get myself into a higher vibe. I'm super happy and joy and giddy, I'll be like, well, it didn't have to be this way. I'll humble and be like, okay, I'm going to be more grateful and more aware that I might not have this forever. So in a sense, I think low vibe NE is when you're only focusing on one side of the coin. It just so happens that most, I think, NE would focus on the fear stuff because that's what would be more readily accessible and easier to remember. But I think, like in my version of like when you take things for granted, that's also low vibe NE in a sense too.
Yeah.
Because Yeah, you
That's
know what I
a
mean?
really good point, because I think that just from my perspective, since I am not an NE ego person, what I'm used to is dealing with the NPs that are spiraling in their fear and not knowing how to help them. But
Yeah, but
I
yeah.
don't realize how that same mentality can also work for good. Like, but because in those times, if that mentality is working for good, you probably aren't complaining about it to someone else, you know?
Yeah, I'm not letting that
Hmm.
on, but internally, it's also a lot harder to get myself out of the fear-based one, which is probably why I would even use the external world to talk to people about it. But internally, I freak out just as much when I'm like super happy and I'm like, am I being humble enough about reality? And I
Yeah,
might
you
also
do.
spiral when I have happy things happen to me too, because then I'm like, oh, I don't feel balanced though, in keeping in mind, you know what I mean? So,
Yeah, and I have noticed that it seems to be common for NPs to sort of have this attitude of gratefulness and humility whenever things go well, and being able to balance that against the other possibilities of that it could have not gone well, and like appreciating that. Where like I think sometimes extroverted sensing, which seeks to impact the tangible reality, and that's how it engages, is by touching and feeling and moving reality. SE, when something good happens, might be more likely to think about the ways that their actions impacted that, and like take responsibility and feel like, I deserve that. I did that. I pushed this ball over here and knocked over that pin. I did that. Where like, because NE is less active with moving the external world, I wonder though, I mean, do you feel like out of control of it? Where like on the one hand, you either are like, oh no, I feel out of control, anything bad could happen. Or like on the other hand, think, wow, I'm not in control. And so it's so great that this good possibility happened.
yeah, I guess I feel like I have trouble taking responsibility for the impact that my life has on others and the impact that life has on me in a sense. Like I never feel like I'm an active agent in any of that. I feel like the one thing I do have control over is my perception of what's going on. And that's my
Hmm.
way of, I guess, being a quote control freak. Because a lot of people I've noticed that don't really know me seem to think that like if they don't know me, they think I'm just this really intellectual, enthusiastic person who doesn't ever seem grumpy, doesn't ever get mad easily. Will get really excited about things, but you don't really know what's making me happy necessarily. Like a lot of people that just first meet me don't know those things about me, and they don't realize how internally it's like this whole other thing going on that like I'm fueling things to fuel my perspective to like live a balanced life. Like I kind of just consume perspectives and information at times to try and always have an inventory on hand, so when shit hits the fan I'm prepared to change my perspective when I feel extremely impacted or something.
Would you say that it's very NE, or NE would relate to the idea of sometimes there is nothing you're supposed to do and there's nothing you need to do. You just need to change your mindset instead?
Yeah, I think NE does subscribe a lot to that. And sometimes, you're actually supposed to maybe do something, but often changing the mindset and keeping it flexible is what gets us to like receive good things in life. And I think that, say, low vibe NE is when you feel like your mindset's beginning to sink down and fixate into one maybe fear-based one, and you just can't get out of it because all you can see are the fearful possibilities generating like all this evidence accumulating to like show you that the world is bad, and you're like, oh shit, like I don't know how to stop this. And I think also
Hmm.
with good things it can also be a little alarming because I'm like, oh, I see only good things happening, but where's the bad to balance that out and water it
You
down?
know,
Like that freaks me out.
I'm really realizing right now, so I'm kind of comparing NE and SE in the sense that I think that SE is really good at noticing. So it's like the NI component is, I know what path I want to go on, so that whenever an opportunity that fits the NI path comes up, it's like, I'm going to take it. It's very like tunnel vision of like when something happens in the sensory, it's like, oh, I'm going to take that opportunity. I'm going to take that opportunity. Where like NE seems to excel at getting out of the tunnel vision of like, is that even the opportunity you want? What possibilities do you even want to focus on to begin with? Where
Yeah.
NI is focused on some possibilities so that whenever an opportunity happens, you grab it. But it's like, would you agree with this? It seems as though NE users, when they look out at the world, they see a lot of people pretty much punching the world to get something, where you just feel like their mentality is wrong and that they're chasing the wrong things, or maybe they aren't.
Gosh, it's so interesting because I'm too focused on like my experience to even judge what other people are doing
Well, do you relate to that or no?
Until the moment like I see them punching the world and I'm like, oh, I do feel like people, I guess, try too hard almost at times to like, they're like, I need to do something. And I'm like, but you don't even know what you're supposed to do yet sometimes is what it looks like to me. And I'm like, you haven't actually like thought through what's going to fit your comfort level and what's going to fit what you have in front of you. You haven't even looked out to see what you even have. You're just blindly doing something like.
Well, actually, if you are an ENTP, comment below, let me know if you relate to this, because maybe this is how ENTPs feel, like with more judgmental TI and more like FE, this is what people should do. Because I guess what I'm doing right now is I'm trying to try on the NE perspective and see.
Yeah, I feel like I feel like it's like if I were to really think about it, I am judgmental of people trying too hard. I just generally with FI choose to not, in a sense.
Well, I'm not like, even trying to say that they're trying too hard. My point is that what I'm thinking is that maybe NE would critique the SE by saying, stop chasing that opportunity and open your mind to other possibilities and change your mindset so that you could get out of the rat race or whatever it is you're chasing.
Yeah, I guess trying too hard in my sense is like when I say try too hard, I mean like they're trying too hard to fixate on one perspective or some, as opposed to open their mind. So I guess it's like trying in like here as opposed to like that.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I would say that the NE-SI axis and the SE-NI axis would both see the other as closed-minded, like in different ways. But like I definitely think that like, you know, you would probably see the drawbacks of NI tunnel vision and just like chase.
Because I'm aware that they might think I don't chase things enough or something, or like I don't try hard enough. So maybe try like physically to do anything hard enough. So maybe SE is kind of like, you just seem kind of like complacent, afraid, held back. I feel like that's maybe the kinds of critiques SE and I might have against or toward how I sometimes have a propensity for not taking action in a way where they think I should be taking action, or not like I should be, or I should at least be like acting like I have an action plan. I rarely have an action plan. I have a perspective plan.
Yeah.
Perspectives I'm gonna adopt in certain scenarios. I guess like my high vibe NE is really good at like people are stressing about something and I'll just sit there and kind of be like, if this happens, then it means this could happen because of this. And I'll like have this like map of like all these like different factors that go into each like possible outcome or scenario. And I have it all mapped out really neatly. So whenever something does happen, I can just fit it in real fast with the outcome I hypothesized could happen. I can never say likelihoods, but I do like having like a choose your own adventure overview of like what's going to happen next. I have no idea when, etc. And it all comes down to kind of balancing like the good outcomes and bad outcomes and everything. When I take my own fear or my own preference or joy out of choosing a perspective, I feel like I can get a smorgasbord buffet style, like taking in of all the perspectives, and so better feel like I can like control my reality because I can see kind of what I'm headed toward, and then maybe choose to take one small action to get away from the thing I don't want. But it's kind of like, to me, it's being resourceful that I only have so much energy, so I'm going to use it toward taking the action to actually push the dial in my favor. That's after I've ascertained and analyzed every single factor that could go into whatever. And I think I've gotten better at it over time because I look at my past track record of things I've predicted incorrectly, or not predicted, more like perceived incorrectly. I don't think I predict anything necessarily with concreteness. I just think of everything that could happen and why it would happen if so, like, if that makes sense. Like, I like just having an idea of all the cards I'm holding for the possibilities in the future, and I will play them accordingly. I won't just take an action until I know what it's going to do and what's going to happen as a result.
And that's so weird. It's the cards is kind of a good metaphor, and weirdly enough, I feel like NE users seem to enjoy card games, or like maybe even you view life as a game where like you want to sort of get the perspective of, would you say you want to get the perspective of where everyone's cards are, or like just yours, or
everyone's cards?
Yeah, like
I feel like it's kind of like, so a little bit of a tangent, but I feel like we're talking about, like, I've been talking a lot lately to FE users who are like ENFJs, and they're talking about how like they feel like when they're trying to make a decision, they take into account other people's preferences and feelings. You know, like, for example, if you want to pick a place to eat, you take what you want to eat, like you put it out there, see what everyone else does, and then you like kind of negotiate it out. I feel like NE to me is a negotiation of perspective and intuition and imagination, where I want to know what is out there, what everyone, quote, the external world, everyone also sees. So
as a possibility.
Yeah, as possibility. So then I see everything, I put it together, and I look at what I see, and I try to measure what makes more sense in a sense. And I don't really think of it as an either or. I try to match what I see into what other people see, and if it doesn't work, I get stressed out. And then, like, maybe, yeah.
I have an idea, or I have a question, is when you're actually literally playing a card game, are you the sort of person that thinks it's your responsibility to know, like, pay attention of like, oh, well, we know that there's, or sort of like, I know that someone has like the ace of hearts, because when they said ace, like nobody like played this yet. Like, okay, that's so weird to me, because I wanted to compare that as an NI user. When I'm playing a card game, I am so focused on my cards, and it's just like, I'm going to make the best move that I possibly can. I'm going to focus on making sure that I do the best I can with my cards, because that's all I could do.
Yeah.
I'm actually very bad at, and I've noticed that NE users do this, and so I don't know if this like is a good metaphor for what you mean. I've noticed that NE users kind of know through process of elimination, you have that wide perspective of where all of the cards are, where like that would be too distracting and too confusing, and it would limit my ability to make sure that I'm using my cards wisely.
Well, it's funny because I'm actually not that good at cards because I overthink what everyone else's cards are. But
really?
Because people said this is actually a good strategy though, because if I can like certain card games, you have to like ask to trade cards, or you have to like play a move to where you have to like, trap someone into, oh, I have no choice but to play the card I know he already has, or blah, blah, blah. Like, I guess I get caught up in the excitement of like trying to guess, if I activate this move, it'll force the person who has a blah, blah, blah to also play that. Whoa. And I need them to, like, I think of it as
that's a perfect example of NE, because that is like the thing I never do.
Well, yeah, because like to me, if I'm going to take action, I'm going to have to make sure that it's going to like propel me to where I want to be. So I want to take one action that activates like a domino effect or some kind of effect that brings out the circumstances for me to succeed, and then take another action in those circumstances. So I think of everything as when I do something, it has an equal opposite reaction from the external imagination world. That world will come back, do something. It reminds me of like trying to like serve a ball and like trusting that the ball will come back, and I have to know where I'm going to be positioned so I can hit the ball where I want it to. So I guess I feel like I need to take as little actions as possible to see what's going to activate, and be very frugal about how many moves I have. So like in a video game too, you only have so many moves when you're playing. So I think card games and video games are actually excellent ways to illustrate NE, because I think of when I do something, the world's going to respond in some way. I have no idea how. So until I know how or can gauge how, I won't even know how to react or even what the right move is.
It's almost like NE wants to get to know the rules, or get to know like
the
Well,
rules of life.
get to know the world that it's in.
Yeah.
That's better. I think when I say get to know the rules, that might be too NFP and ETE. I don't
Well,
really know.
I
Maybe
guess
not.
well, for NE and TE, it's like the rules with which life operates, and TI is like the system with which life abides by. So either way, NE has to have a plan of some sort as to how many moves it's going to make based on how many moves the world will make
It's
back.
like you want to really understand and see the world around you before you impact it, whereas SE is focused on its own personal path and its own destiny of like the NI of like, this is my path. And so how can I kind of force that out? Like,
Yeah. And I feel like I'm like, well, you see, the world in some aspects is delicate and some aspects is tenacious. And I don't know the difference from the vantage point of the information I've imbibed about the world. So I have to really play it well, which is why I'll spend so much time researching before I do anything.
even with card games, what's fun for me is to like organize my cards, make sure I know what everything is, make sure I'm alert so that whenever it's my turn or there's an advantage for me, I'm like, my ears are perked. I see the advantage so I could do something. But part of the appeal is almost that there's no way of knowing if I'm going to win or not. And just sort of not knowing, like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, see,
I'm not trying to preserve, I'm just trying to like stay alert to potential moves.
I play to win or I play to not lose, and I just want to stay alive. I don't feel like the act of playing itself is like fun necessarily. I think the act of using strategy to figure out what's going on and then translating that into life is like the only way I enjoy those kinds of games.
Yeah, I don't like that. But anyway, so I have a question is, can you describe a time in which your inaction and your imagination and your wider understanding of all of the possibilities and like understanding the world around you in that NE level, can you describe ways that that attitude toward life has served you well in like sort of a higher vibe way?
Hmm.
Because I think that a lot of, if you're an NISE user listening, you might be frustrated by the inaction, frustrated that you might not take responsibility for your impact and like all these things, or like maybe you don't know the cards that you want to play enough. But I do really think that that there's a benefit to that I want to convey.
It's funny because I would say with the card game metaphor, I'm good at knowing my cards of moves I can make. I'm good at knowing other people's cards, but I'm not good at knowing and factoring in how other people are also, and maybe sometimes analyzing or trying to get a sense of what my cards are. And so I think that when I don't think about that, I might negatively impact someone in that I don't realize the power that my perspective can have over people, to where if I don't seem to care about them, it might hurt because I might see them so well. I forget that they see me as someone who knows them well. So I think I've hurt loved ones in the past when I'm thinking
Can
enough
we
about.
talk about positives though?
No. I mean, yes, but that was like something I've
Mhm.
been thinking about because I have to say
Mhm.
both sides before I can say that. So I
Oh,
guess,
okay.
I guess that what I was trying to say was that I don't even think about what other people's perception of my card slash me is, but that can really benefit me in being kind of fearless at times of like, I don't know, being like a person who speaks up at the right time for something I see wrong because I've already thought through every single reason why I'm right. So like if I see injustice and I call it out, I'm always comfortable at that point. I don't really care what people have to say or having an argument because I've already thought through every counter argument they could have, every reason that it's okay for me to believe this. And I guess I just feel like my inaction helps me be more confident about the stands I'm taking in a sense on certain like standing my ground basically. It's helped me feel more, I guess, secure in not like feeling overly challenged or attacked at times where I've like really done things to back up. Because I guess like I think of the inaction that people see as like the waiting period before I actually take action. But because maybe it's not expressed as such until the action is taken, people won't really know why I'm standing by. So I guess I have, maybe in a sense, it's like I have the power of anticipation and surprise on my side, to where when I finally do something, it's like, oh shoot, and it has like a bigger impact because I didn't like let anyone know necessarily what was going to happen or what was going on.
Well, also, do you feel like maybe when you do take an action, it's maybe even more believable than if an SE user, well, not that it's more believable, but like if an SE user is like always saying something and always doing something, then you might wonder, well, what is it you're trying to gain? Or like,
yeah, it's kind of like the boy who cried wolf. Like he cries enough times, no one believes him anymore. I'm like, I don't want to take too much action, or no one's going to take the actions I do take seriously, and that hurts me more as an SI user. So I guess I feel like it's kind of like the idea of like saving up money to purchase something. You have more money accumulated. I have more capital when it comes to how powerful my actions can be, because I save up all that momentum that other people might, like SE, might be losing. So I guess I feel like whenever I finally do speak my mind, and I've thought it all through and it comes out really eloquently, people are like, whoa, where did this come from? And I'm like, because I spent all that time not doing something.
It reminds me of like a gosh, what's it called? Like a bow and arrow sort of thing. If you're slinged back, like if you think of the NE user as always slinged back, I don't know. That's so weird. But like maybe for SE, or maybe for SE though, it's like kind of like a game of frequency, or like a numbers game of like a boom, 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 boom.
Yeah, I feel like I retract more so I can push myself further, and other people think of it as me being lazy, but I'm like, I mean, no, because even when I'm not doing anything, my brain is always doing things. It's running through scenarios, it's running through reflecting and processing on what I have already been through and integrating it into what I see now. So it's impossible for me to like never, because whenever people are like, you aren't doing anything, in my mind thinking is doing something, but I understand now that like they mean like physically like doing actions that people can actually understand. But if I'm just quiet all day, day after day, and there was like a hidden video camera of like me just in my room thinking, they wouldn't know what I was thinking. So of course it looked like I'm just not doing anything. But
that's a good point. Well, I also just want to say really briefly that I think I've said this before, but I just want to say that we use the word impact for SE and we use the word imagination for NE. But I want to say that both are equally powerful, and I believe that both are reality. SE is tangible reality, but, the powers of NE work best when it's not directly impacting tangible reality, but both are just as powerful. And I almost view NE as like metaphysically powerful in ways that is harder to explain because it is intuition. But if anyone believes in or is familiar with like, I guess, spiritual metaphysical principles regarding like how your mindset and the possibilities that you even entertain can impact what happens to you, I think that that's kind of an example of maybe high vibe NE is managing your own mentality so that you are able to receive certain possibilities.
I think so. I think it is like, yeah, because I feel like when I'm managing my mindset, which is working behind the scenes, it's kind of like I can like get a bird's eye view of all the cards at play, basically. And when I take an action, I guess it is like managing my mentality best because I can see others' and how their mentalities are affecting reality too. And so when I want to like, actually impact reality, I'll have done all this imaginative research that other people might not have been doing. And I think as a kid, I really saw that and was frustrated because I was like, I'd be like, Mom, like we don't have to like worry so much about this is because this is, and like she wouldn't have even like bothered thinking it through like that. That made me really frustrated. And I guess I felt like that with like friends. I'm like, don't you realize that if you say this to this person, it's going to do this? Because of, I was like so annoyed that all this time I'd spent observing, in a sense, was going to waste because other people weren't listening to what I had to say because they hadn't spent so much time observing. And I guess I feel like
gathering the perspectives is another way to put it. Maybe.
Yes. As an NE dom, I'm always gathering perspectives. But see, it's not the same as an I dom, like an INJ, because I like will gather perspective by doing things. They're not like
it's like you go out and get the perspective, but like it could be a thought experiment.
Exactly. Like I'm still like a little like idle in a sense. Like I'll just, from this conversation, I'll have researched so much about like how an ENFJ works, but we haven't even been talking about how ENFJs work, right?
So yeah, here's like another thing I want to mention is the way that NE cross parallels constantly. And during this conversation, Crystal is not just listening to the words I'm saying. You're not just listening to how I'm saying it either. And you're not just looking at my face. And you're also not just thinking about the concept that I'm saying either. You're thinking about what I'm not saying. You're thinking about what I could have said but chose to not. You're thinking about multiple things at once. And I think that's almost something that is nearly impossible for an NI user to even really consider.
Yeah, I think so. It feels like NI users like block out time to think about one thing at a time. And I don't really know what that's like. Because I never block things out. Yeah.
Both of us are, as intuitives, are thinking conceptually right now, but I am focused on mining the concept of NE. That's it. My mind is not going on any other tangents. Whereas in order for you to even understand NE, you have to look at the whole map of,
just like we said with the cards and the player. Yeah, because right now, like we've come up with so many theories over the years, because when we got to something, like over time, like we talk about comparing FE and FI, and then I start making a conclusion about all extroverted functions might do this when compared to their introverted counterpart.
Yeah, exactly. You're always, you're probably every single time you say NE, your mind probably has a parallel about SE going on.
Behind. It actually does, yeah. And then that parallel is applying to many different scenarios in my life. Like you say NPs, and I think of every single NP I know, and if it matches with how they behave and why it doesn't match, it's like all over the place. And so because it's like my brain just feels like a huge supercomputer with like multiple Google Chrome windows and multiple open tabs. And so I think that's why it's kind of hard for me to do something that's directly impactful, because I'm just like, hang on, I gotta close all the tabs first and figure out if this is actually what I want to do. And by the time I'm doing it, I'm like, I think the dial's shifted again. I have to rethink my action again, because I'll notice changing continue. Like I might have been like, for example, it's like I was gonna tell this guy how I felt, but then one expression from him made me suddenly be like, okay, wait, I didn't anticipate that. That doesn't look like a good sign. I'm going to stop. And so there's sometimes where I do want to take actions, but something in the intuitive environment around me stops me. And it's a good instinct, because later I'll find out, oh, wait, that was a bad time to do it. Or I found this information that changes my intention to do something. And the smallest sensitivities really get to me in that sense. And if they're fear-based, it's bad. But if they're like, oh, shoot, there's something I need to balance this.
For whatever reason, I just got this image in my mind of you like in a room surrounded by windows and like tinkering with the blinds all at once to like, in order to see and like arrange, like, I don't know, like arranging like how much light you let in and not. I don't know if that resonates or not, or like
it actually does resonate.
It's almost like pulling at it specifically in order to get a perspective, or like to get the light in the right amount.
How much light is let in does illuminate the room differently. Like a camera will be like, we need more light over here because they're sensitive to light. And as an NE user, I'm just as good as twisting the perception as I am at having the perception twist me, so it does resonate.
And another just sort of thing I want to bring up is something we mentioned earlier, is that lower vibe NE might feel very resigned or complacent to the world around them and just completely give up control and like maybe even end up living a life that they don't really want to live because they just feel powerless. Whereas on the other hand, I would almost say that like high vibe NI is like the virtue of like spiritual surrender and like being able to receive like life's miracles and let life take you by
Wait, did you
the
say
wind.
high vibe? High vibe
Yeah.
NE?
Yeah.
Okay.
High vibe NE, I almost feel like is spiritual surrender, which surrender is different than being resigned. Like resigned is like, I give up, where like surrender is like, take me where you want life, sort of like.
Yeah, well, I think that, yes, in any case, whether it's low or high, and E is going with the flow of the intuition. And I guess high vibe and E is, I have such an understanding of all the details and the components of everything that's ever happened to me. So I feel like I'm secure in my perception of all the cards, good or bad, that balance things out. And I'm honestly okay with whatever happens. I'm honestly okay with not having to overly plan out or obsess over like what I want to do with my cards or whatever. I'm just content to let flow out the action I need. So it comes down to like this peace about things, because they're not just like being lazy, because they have perceived everything about how life is and realized life's flow can be trusted. And so I'm not going to stress out too much about it, because I've spent my life analyzing all the components that go into what, quote, life's flow even is. And so when you trust that flow, it's because you've actually understood how it operates and how it impacts you and why it's good sometimes, why it's bad sometimes. So then you feel free to go and flow with it. But other people that maybe don't analyze life's flow the way Annie's so sensitive to might not jive with that, but that's okay with them. At least for me, if I feel like I like scouted out, the scene enough, I'm going to be able to relax, which is why you might have noticed that in some areas of my life, I'm very go with the flow and always have good things turn out, like making friends with people, like any stranger. I feel confident I can talk to, like, I don't get social anxiety easily. And like just so many like things like that in a microcosmic way. I'm just like, the flow of life seems to always bring me what I need to. So I don't really care who I meet today. If I meet someone cool, if not, whatever, like life factors seem to be trustworthy no matter what it throws at me. But with other things I'm not as experienced in, where I tend to see bad or things that I don't want happen, I'll be like, I feel resigned that it always happens this way. What am I not seeing? And I won't know what I'm not
That's
seeing.
such a perfect question, is like, what am I not seeing? It's like, what possibility am I not seeing? And like, also it seems like low vibe NE can get caught in like a loop of some sort.
Yeah. And so
I don't mean loop as in like your cognitive function loop of like your dom tertiary or whatever. I mean this sort of NE like inaction, but like a mental loop of NE. How do you describe that?
Gosh, I feel like, well, I think that when NE only sees like one thing or something, or
you said the word fixated earlier. And I guess really an example is when it's like, for example, if you keep meeting the same kind of partner and you don't, and it keeps, and like the story keeps ending in the same way, where they piss you off in the same way and then you piss them off. It's like, you're like, what am I not, like, why do I keep attracting the same scenario? It feels like you're like in this Groundhog Day thing. That's the loop I mean.
Yeah, asking myself why isn't actually that helpful, because I don't know why. But if I say, what am I not seeing? And for more context, then I go, there's a different interpretation of why this keeps happening, because on some level, that's what I like. But what am I not seeing about what I think I like? Because there's some, like, I have to expand it even more.
Would
like,
you say, let me just, here, can you pause on that, or do you want to say it really quick?
Oh, I just had one last thing to say. Like, my friend said that when I'm confused and upset, I have to expand farther, not like cave into the bad stuff. I have to go further, and then I can get the balance back, the good stuff. Because when I'm in a bad place, I will just fixate only on bad things. But if I expand further and force myself to expand NE and see what I'm not seeing, it helps me balance.
A high vibe NE is expansive. And I would say, would you agree that the reason why lower vibe NE can get fixated on things and it can feel like you're living in like Groundhog Day where everything's repeating itself? Do you think that that happens when you NE, it's almost like you're not taking action too much, or like, or you haven't changed your perspective enough, or?
I think it is like, I haven't changed my perspective enough. I haven't seen enough. I think I've seen enough, but I haven't. And see, here's the thing. Sometimes it is like, because what happens in those cases is like an SE user or something with someone with stronger sensing, like an SJ, they'll just say, do something then. And that is hit or miss, because sometimes doing something in an SE way or making an impact does change my perspective. It can go the other way around. Or I have to think about it more and expand my perspective to what I'm not seeing. But either way, when I'm in a low vibe place and I want to get back to a high vibe, I must change something about my perspective. And someone saying the words change your perspective could lead me to conclude I need to do something. But if I don't know what to do, if I have to do something, then I'll feel even worse.
So can I want to share an example of our friendship and how I've given you advice that doesn't work. And I've also learned to give different advice, sort of thing. So like, for example, let's say you're caught up on a potential relationship that doesn't seem to be working. Your FI is sad about something. If I were to respond, just get over them, just love yourself more, just make time to work on yourself, that doesn't work for you really. Mm-mm. But I remember the time that I told you, I was like, gosh, what was it? I said something like, I love you so much in your life. Like, do you see how you are caring about this person's opinion of you more than your own life? As in like the getting good food, getting good sleep, like your career. Like, I was like, what if you try loving your career more than loving this person's opinion of you or something? And like that changed how you saw it. Mm-hmm. But when I told you to just invest in loving yourself more, that didn't make sense.
Yeah.
Because I was telling you an action to take in order to get out of the spot, which is what would have worked for me. But you needed to see that it's like the blinds were down for one area of your life, and you needed to tip the perspective and like start to love other.
Like, I feel like that more. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think I reminded you, like, I was like, I understand your FI is really sad about like not feeling validated in this situation, but your FI also really loves writing.
Yeah, like expand my perspective, like reminding me of the things I wasn't seeing, which was, oh, I've been neglecting other areas of my life, mm-hmm. which was true, but the solution was to see that I was doing that as opposed to feel like doing that. Because my feelings, at least for me, because my introverted judging is so linked to my NE in a sense that like I will not be able to do anything until I see it. And I'll get so blinded, especially because, and I like tend to, like, it's funny because like in terms of my love life, it's been an area where it's been very hard to have like an expansive perspective, because the people I tend to like fixate an FI way on are people that are making me question a lot about my perspective. And so it's in the process of like expanding, but it's contracting so hard that it tortures me. So if someone reminds me to be the person to expand it and look at other things in my life, it helps me be like, oh, actually I'm going to get away from this for a while. Yeah, because I mean, I certainly have had more like random love interests come and go than just like the big ones I've spent years obsessing over to you. But those big ones actually represent more kind of almost NE struggles, because they had forced me to see how I impact the world, but that's very hard for me naturally to do. And so expanding further was the only way to get myself out of those kinds of perceptual shifts. Like I needed to shift my perception to get out of those kinds of things more than just love myself more. Because I'm like, I love myself more, but what I'm doubting is my perspective. And when I am doubting that, I need to expand it more rather than contract it more. So the advice actually is negative for me when you say love yourself more, because then it just sounds like try to contract more to me, even that's not what you mean to say. Like, to me, it sounds like that. But when you remind me that maybe there's something you're not seeing, even those magic words will make me be like,
that.
oh, I know what I'm not seeing. I need to go shower. Like it could, like, that's actually a trigger for me to actually think about, what am I not seeing? And then I actually find it pretty fast. And I'll be like, oh, okay. And then I'll like be in a good mood again and like not be obsessing over this one thing. Because if I'm obsessing, chances are I'm forgetting to expand. And I need to always be expanding.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what helps for me, at least.
I also want to say too that the whole idea of surrendering is very hard for me. And I just want to say that as an ENJ who I tend to test as a P in some tests, in a dichotomy test, it's at least close, P and J. Because the thing is, I consider myself an open person, and it takes me a very long time to get to a conclusion. And I think that that's still true. Like, especially like when I first was learning about type, I would be like, well, I'm so open-minded about things, and I also like I'm not really quick to judge like things. But that's because it's like my introverted judging is at the bottom, and I'm always like just taking in more feedback, and not like with my NI too. But anyway, I just want to say too that even though I like relate to being like an open-minded person, I don't relate at all whatsoever with like the expanding your perspective thing. And I also have I've realized like I'm kind of a control freak in the sense that I'm like, all right, Megan, this is your life, and this is what you want to get out of life. And this is the meaning of life, and this is your purpose. And so in every moment, you have to remember what your purpose is, and you have to, use that as your filter through everything that you're seeing so that you can see your purpose everywhere. You can see, like with every person you talk to, remember how important love is all the time. And it's like, I know my purpose and why I'm here, that sometimes I could be sort of a control freak of like, I need to make sure everything I'm doing is like perfect, in the sense that I need to make sure I'm impacting the environment in the right way in order to make sure that I'm on my path. That whenever, NJs, people can say that NJs seem arrogant because NJs do understand that they can control the world around them, and NJs do understand that they're powerful, but there comes a point when NJs try and play God and try and think that they can make things happen, which, yeah, we can make things happen. But on the other hand, NE, I think, is like, I can't make it happen. I'm here for the ride.
I feel like I'm like God. I feel like I'm like God's messenger, arbiter, like where I'm like, oh, like let him speak through me, or like let me be one with God's will. And like often I think I get into this perspective when I'm upset, where I'm just like, am I just a vessel for God to do things? Am I ever going to get to do my own thing?
Almost like blah, you blah, blah. Are this back and forth of like, God, show me the way. What am I not seeing? Sort of thing, where like, I think like the way that NI is spiritual or connects with his spirit is sort of like all right, I trust you to tell me what my purpose is. I trust you to give me the clarity when it is time. I trust you to give me the knowing when it is time. And I just listen to my inner wisdom in every moment. And I trust that I can, it's like, I'm like, okay, thank you for telling me what my destiny is and like this path. Thank you. I see it. Now it's time to go get it,
Yeah. And I feel like I'm just like, I feel like I've learned that I'll never just feel like doing something, but I'll feel like confident in my perspective in a way where nothing can shoot it down. And that's when I should be doing stuff. And if I'm not in that space, I should rather do nothing, because it will have the wrong impacts that I don't want it to have. And this is what I've learned just from my life and like making mistakes. And I don't really know how often I say that to people or how to even get that across, because I feel like most people don't understand what it's like to be like that.
That is so weird because I'm realizing that like I really do think that depending on what your intuition function is, that like not to get too religious here, but like that God speaks to you differently and you have a different understanding that I just think what if I get clarity? What if I get clarity more than you? In a sense that you wait for clarity, but so do I. You know what I mean? Like it seems like
Yeah.
NI has this knowing, and then the task is trying to use SE to get it.
Yeah. Well, I think that for me, at least how I've seen it is NI and SE seems to have more abrupt changes in its receiving, where it'll be nothing and then clarity. And like it's extreme enough to where you'll recognize it. Whereas I'm always kind of in the gray of like kind of clear, kind of not.
Oh, it's like you see some, but the whole puzzle hasn't formed yet.
Yeah, exactly. But when the whole puzzle forms, I not only know it, but I can say it to everyone else and have them have clarity too. I can spread it. But the point at which I have so much clarity that I can do that is very hard to reach. It feels like kind of like, what is it, like a dimmer light switch where like it's like we're always trying to get more clear. Okay, now we've passed the threshold at which we actually are clear. Now we can do stuff. But I will know, like, in a sense, when I'm not ready, because I won't feel good about it. And as long as I don't feel good about it, I cannot bring myself to take any action. In fact, I might not even know how to take action.
Yeah, for me, I literally like I don't know, and then I know.
Yeah, see, for me, I'm like, I kind of know, I kind of don't know, and then I kind of know, and I try to follow that, and I'm like, oh, I super know now. Okay, cool. But it takes effort to like expand till I get to the point of knowing, because it's always an expansion. But see, the good thing is I never feel like, even when I don't know, I always see the light at the end of the tunnel to where I can know. And I know. Like, I know I can know. So even when I'm upset, I still know that, you know, like any moment now, I could just see things differently and I'll feel better. And that does happen. So, like, to me, I don't feel like I have to take action because my perspective just kind of moves itself pretty well.
So I don't know how long we've been talking or if it's time to almost wrap up.
I think it's time to wrap up.
But I have a question for you that I think could end this, and then we can move on to SE. The next episode is, what advice would you give to another NE user that is wanting to move from a lower vibe, sort of resigned feeling, afraid maybe to impact or afraid to act and impact the external world, versus like a higher vibe NE that, you know, has a wider perspective?
Well, I feel like it's harder depending on if you're an ENP or INP, because INPs are a little more held back.
We could talk about both if you want.
I guess regardless, I feel like the what am I not seeing thing works for NE, because we DOMs, ENPs, because we can generate it faster. And like, you know, but I think INPs might not literally know. It's also because they have an introverted judging FI or TI before their NE. So what I would say is, for all NPs, when you feel contracted, list out the scenarios that you're afraid of. Actually dig into the intuition of what you fear. Flesh out what it would look like. When you're like super paranoid, be like, this and this would happen, and then this and this and this. And when you actually read it, it might not actually seem as realistic as you feared it in your brain. And that can then make you be like, oh, okay. And then focus on sketching out a more realistic scenario, because chances are you can like probably figure it out. So like, you know, like a TA user might be like, oh, everyone's stupid. Do you really think that? Like, dig into what it would look like for everyone to be stupid, then challenge that, because you can do that. So I think that it takes NE really realizing what it's fixating on. It has to identify that, and then it can expand. Because if you don't even know what you're getting stuck on, you won't be able to know how to use that as a jumping off point to like go big.
That actually reminds me of Tim Ferriss, who is a pretty well-known podcaster, businessman, entrepreneur, and I firmly believe that he is an ENFP, but I don't think anyone would argue that he uses NE. Maybe I'm wrong. Who knows what sort of arguments are going to be out there, but I think he's the spitting image of an NE Dom. He defines himself as a polymath. His biggest skill is allowing people to come on his show and share what they think and gather all those ideas. He's famous for the 4-hour work week, which is pretty much, I figured out how to be lazy, and also I don't have to work that hard. And guess what? It doesn't matter. He's the poster child for that, honestly. It's like using your mind to figure out ways to not have to work that hard, right? Mm-hmm. But anyway, he has this concept called fear setting that I think any NE user would really enjoy. And you define what your fears are, and then right after you define the fear, you write what you're going to do to prevent the fear. And then after that,
I remember to do that. Whoops.
And then after that, it's repair. Is what if you can't prevent the fear? What are you going to do to repair it if it happens anyway? And weirdly doing that, and I've even done that as not an NE user, anyone could do this. Weirdly doing that makes risks a lot less scary because it shows you like what you can control. Like I remember I put on there once, like I was worried about my car, like crapping out on me. And it's like, what can I do to prevent it? Get an oil change. What if it craps out on me? Ask someone for help, you know?
I feel like it's really hard for me to define my fears that concretely, but in the moment, if you're smiling for any user, it'd be easier to identify. But like sitting here, I can't really think of like those kinds of fears other than like, I'm unworthy. And I'm like, shit, what do I do to like stop that? And I'm like, okay. But like in the moment, I'll know what to do more because I'll be in it. So I just got to practice journaling out when I think I'm in a bad place. What am I actually afraid of? And how realistic is it?
Mm-hmm. So. And also like it could remind you sort of the stuff that like you're already doing. Like let's say you're like afraid of getting like an illness or something, and then you remind yourself like, okay, like the thing is not all NE users are like shit at eating and working out. Like I'm sure you have some routines that really, really help you in the sense where like maybe you're
normally.
Yeah, it's like I think it could show you the things that you're already doing that are on the right track. Which, like for example, like maybe you're worried about getting like some illness, and then you're like, oh, well, I go on a walk every day, and or like I don't know, or like, oh, I make sure to have vegetables pretty frequently. I don't know, like what you would be afraid of.
Yeah, I need to actually think about this because I'm like,
It's like, in this area I might not be as like where I want to be, but in these areas I am. It's like almost like breaking it down to like the SI like elements.
I think breaking it down is something that's really helpful, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
All right,
that was fun.
Yeah, I guess the theme is expand somehow.
Yeah, and I guess next week we'll be back with SE. And then also I just have to say too that in our last episode we did talk about our typing services and how we added a new tier. Honestly, scratch what we said because we're changing that up a little in the sense where now there's 4 tiers. Just because we wanted there to be 4 different options with different levels of interacting with us, where you'll see, I don't want to go too much into it, but you'll see when you look on the link that there are now other options. If you were interested in Crystal and I working with you in helping you find your type, there is like a higher option if you are someone that you maybe listen to our podcast a lot, you really resonate with both of us, you want to know how we would type you, but also that package comes with 3 hours of video chatting with Crystal and I. So this is something we haven't done before, but we want to be able to start doing to the few people that really know that they want to really chat with us more. And you know that you want to get our opinion on your type and sort of have us psychoanalyze from you what functions we're seeing and where, give advice to like help you get to like a higher vibe version of yourself. So it's not like just the typing service. We can give you advice, and you also could ask us literally any question you want if you're trying to learn cognitive functions yourself. Mm-hmm. So Anything else you have to add to that, Crystal?
I do not.
Well, I'm really excited. Also, Synchronic Saturdays will be having a new theme song soon, so
Oh my God, so
get used to
exciting.
that. All right. Well, thank you so much for watching, and thank you, Crystal, for sharing your experience about NE, and happy to be here. Have a wonderful rest of your day, you guys. All right. Bye.